If you could give our listeners one single piece of sort of general business or career advice, what would that be?
Go wide. I think going wide and accumulating a wealth of very diverse and divergent experiences really equips you later on, and you don't really know when, to flourish at a different level. So I think that going wide and accumulating, as I've done, right? Different sets of experiences when it comes to international geographies or nuances within finance or outside of finance, going wide, but then in every single experience, pushing very hard to extract the most out of it, really can make you a very well-rounded professional that maybe later on, makes you capable of accomplishing endeavors that, maybe a few years ago you were not even thinking about.
This is Net Learnings, the podcast that keeps finance and banking professionals ahead of the curve. In each episode, we focus on career growth and practical advice while mixing in the occasional war story. Join us as we tap into the minds of leaders and experts at some of the world's most notable financial services firms and enterprises. Let's get started.
Hello and welcome to Net Learnings. I'm your host, Kyle Peterty. Our guest today is Julio Martinez, co-founder and CEO at Abacum, which is an FP&A automation software. Julio brings 20 years of finance, investing, and entrepreneurial experience, having held roles in wealth management, investment banking, and venture capital, to name just a few of them. Julio, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for joining me.
Kyle, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Excellent. Well, we often get started on these episodes by asking our guests to tell us a bit about their company. I think it's important for context, before we jump into what Abacum does, to maybe zoom out a moment and talk about the finance function at a corporation. So whether it's, a tech company, a manufacturing business, or whatever large professional services firm, companies all have a finance team. And FP&A, which stands for Financial Planning and Analysis, is a critical division within that finance team. So let's kind of start there. In your words, what is FP&A and how does it fit into the overall finance function at a corporation or a government issuer?
That's a great question, Kyle. So FP&A is the most strategic side of a finance function, right? A finance function needs to make sure that the business is operating from a financial perspective tightly, right? So you are paying the bills, you make sure you collect the money, you need to book the transactions in your accounts, and all that stuff, right? You need to post an audit. All that is what we call operational finance. But as we know today, finance is way more than that, right? Finance has a direct impact in a strategy. Think of M&A, think of planning, budgeting, looking into the future, producing scenarios for better decision-making with financials, but also operational KPIs. Financial planning and analysis, FP&A, is the glue that encompasses all this strategic side of the finance function.
Got it. Okay, that's really good context. And so with that in mind, then tell us a little bit about Abacum and how Abacum does FP&A differently.
Totally. So Abacum is a SaaS, right? It's a B2B SaaS. It's a software that we deploy in our customers in the mid-market and really empowers these finance teams to become more strategic. Before us, oftentimes what we find in our customer base is that there is a lot of manual tasks. These folks, remember, finance folks, extremely talented, very well prepared, like ready to drive, business impact, then stay stuck in manual tasks for 50, 60, 70% of their time. And this is manually copy pasting around Excel or Google Sheets, index match, some ifs, and so on to clean the data. So there is a lot of manual tasks that we automate end to end. So first of all is getting the automation layer right for these finance teams to have both operational data, but also financial information ready at their fingertips. The second thing that you can see a very different dynamic before and after us is in enabling finance function to be a business partner. So oftentimes the finance folks want to really be that trust advisor for marketing, for sales, for HR, but they don't have the time, they don't have the platform, spreadsheets, spreadsheets are awesome in many ways, but they are not prone to collaboration. So
True. Yeah, very true.
they find a lot of difficulties in Slack, Microsoft Teams, email, like trying to influence the rest of the organization. We are a native collaborative platform that really makes it very easy for finance team to do bottom-up budgeting, reforecasting scenarios together with the rest of their stakeholders.
Very cool. And then to make it just a little bit more concrete, can you give us one example? Maybe it's with respect to like sales software, CRM or something, like the old way versus the new way, just to make it more concrete for people.
Totally. So imagine first day of the month, the FP&A team is really working with accounting to see when the numbers are going to be closed. That's going to happen maybe on the 5th. And then they know they need to report on the 15th or the 20th. And once they get that information until, it takes them 10 days to really clean that data, normalize that data, and start analyzing and taking a look at that data. Then they will have a couple of days to really run around the company like a headless chicken, trying to, hey, marketing, what's the forecast for your budget? Like, I'm not following this. Hey, HR, like, what was the latest numbers for hiring? Or, we had some attrition. What was that? Trying to update a model just to keep, and make some numbers flow. With us, for instance, on the 3rd of the month, we produce a flash report where, we are not solving for accuracy, but with machine learning, we can really forecast for many businesses, how that's going to look like later on. So they can produce a temporary report that is starting to influence better decision-making in the company. So then you can front load all these meaningful conversations. Then you can start to collaborate within the platform. And instead of, taking a couple of days only to fill up a gap, like they can really, with operational metrics in the platform at their fingertips, they can really go to marketing and say, hey, I'm seeing that the last 3 campaigns were not performing as we were hoping for. So what's the plan? Are we reducing the budget? With changing channels? And then you become this partner that is really posing the challenging question that is really value additive to the business. So it's a very clear change in dynamic before and after us.
So what about the business is most exciting to you? And then conversely, what keeps you up at night, you and the management team?
Yeah, that's a great question. So what's most exciting always for us is customers, right? When we pile up more and more customers, this is, the game changer for us. And, finance is complex, right? And people are very demanding. So having more and more customers also comes with more demands and, greater pressures to develop and better products. So this is very exciting and, serving and actually fulfilling our mission, which is literally making every finance team the hero in the organization. That is what's thrilling for us. Maybe to your second point on what keeps us up at night, I think it's retaining and attracting the best talent in the market. I think that the market has improved more recently, but I think this is a classic, and operating with the highest standards in a very demanding environment, building a culture of high performance, but at the same time building a culture of happy people that are able to produce their best work in the company. This is something that is sometimes not easy to reconcile.
Yeah, and I'd love to talk a little bit more about culture. We'll circle back to that later in the discussion.
Great.
I just want to kind of round out some more sort of fintech topics. We have a lot of investing enthusiasts among our audience, and so it'd be cool to kind of talk fintech more generally and sort of some themes. One of the things I'm always curious about over the last kind of, I'll call it 5 to 7 years, it seems like fintech has just exploded. Like it's in our vernacular. We have a term for it. It's like its own industry. I'm hearing offshoots of it. Like I've heard you say things like CFO Tech on social media. Like there's even kind of spin-offs of fintech. And I guess what I'm curious, like as a finance person, I know that technology and finance has been evolving for a long time. But why this recent explosion of fintech? Has it been cheap capital? Has it been the availability of data? Like what in your view has caused financial technology to just go crazy lately?
Yeah, I'm going to focus here on what we call CFO Tech maybe, and maybe then I zoom out to the broader fintech space. But when it comes to enabling finance teams, especially in the mid-market, right? But enabling finance teams in corporations or mid-market companies, I think that there has been a revolution lately. So there was previous software, but you know how legacy solutions are, right? So difficult to use, difficult to implement. So they came with a lot of baggage, right? It's complex software, it's expensive, difficult to deploy, and so on. However, the finance function was neglected for a long time in finance in corporations, right? So think of the wave that we saw in HR tech, or the wave that we saw in marketing tech, so in the end of the day, waves of innovation have really changed how sales teams, marketing teams, even HR teams. I really like to emphasize how similar the HR wave was in the past, because they can be considered a cost function as well. Sometimes some people consider finance a cost function as well. Mm-hmm. And hey, they are in touch with every department in the company, like finance. But unlike finance, they don't have access to all the wealth of data. But HR was actually empowered with HRIS, like the single source of truth, hiring software like ATS. Finance was still neglected and became the most under-leveraged function in the company, right? Think of all these extremely talented people. I always say the same, ready to have an impact. And then, you have a old-fashioned ERP and, maybe a bunch of spreadsheets, but you are not able to upgrade your game. You don't have data. You don't have a low code or no code ETL solution to really clean your data and master it. And so finance has been really neglected. And I think now in the last 3 to 5 years, we've seen this catalyst where people have realized, well, it's a turn for finance to really have a broader impact in the organization. And we also see that because expectations on finance teams have really skyrocketed. I think board members and investors, both in private equity and venture capital, are really placing more and more pressure on finance teams. And the equation is not really working for these folks. So I think this is really the catalyst and the broader perspective around CFO Tech and how to empower finance teams in corporations. The broader fintech topic is it's very nuanced, right? Because there is wealth tech and there is lending and there is FX, and so, but definitely has been booming. It's a sector that has been booming for over the last 10, 15 years, and I'm sure we'll continue seeing a lot of innovation there.
Okay. Have rising rates forced you to think differently about your business?
Totally. I think it was definitely a wave that made us all rethink our growth model. And that was clearly something that impacted, I think, every single venture-backed business, right? So we are a venture-backed company. So we were in a market where raising capital had a very different dynamic than it has today. And growth, was considered the prime goal of the company. And therefore everybody was, growing at, basically all cost. With raising interest rates, obviously the cost of capital became way more expensive. And I think every single venture-backed company in the world had to rethink very, very swiftly what that meant for their business. And obviously the paradigm became sustainability, efficiency, and a very different growth model. So definitely that was the case for us as well.
If you consider that to be sort of like a theme, I guess for the investing enthusiast, I'd love to ask about some other themes. What are some other kind of things you forecast in the next 3 to 5 years that people should look out for in the fintech space?
In the fintech space, definitely there are a few trends that are going to be changing a lot how we think today. And I'm sorry to use a buzzword, but machine learning, and I insist on machine learning, but also AI, right? And artificial intelligence. We continue seeing more and more applicability on that. I think we need to exhaust first ML into, robo advisory or credit scoring, or there are a very good number of applications forecasting accuracy. So not everything is pure generic artificial intelligence or everything that has become more popular in the last year. But definitely in fintech, it's been a long while that, and I'm saying like the last 5 to 7 years, we've seen more and more companies using ML. And I think that's a trend that we need to consolidate. And we are, for instance, ourselves, we're heavily focused there, right? It's not only some AI applications, but actually, there are many companies out there already using ML in a way that makes a lot of sense and adds a lot of value.
Abacum has offices in New York and Barcelona, and you have a personal footprint in both of those locations. So I'd love to get your take on some companies in both the European market and the North American market. Like, are there one or two businesses in each that are doing like really cool things that you think should be on our radars?
100%. So we have offices exactly in New York and then also London and Barcelona.
Oh, London too. Sorry.
Yeah. So no. So there is a lot of fintech in London that they are doing very cool stuff. I think on the European side, I think that there are two neobanks that have really changed and scaled to a magnitude that has made everybody, including regulators, rethink what finance and fintech means. And those are N26 and Revolut. Those are well known in the European markets, and obviously European regulations and the multi-country strategy that you need to follow there to scale makes things more complex. But these folks have scaled to a magnitude that they have gone beyond being a challenger bank, and they are well established now, and they need to deal a lot with regulators. And when I started in fintech, they were just nascent companies, like super small, and I just find mind blowing what has happened and the user experience that they are providing, both to consumers, but more importantly these days to SMBs, right? They are really conquering the SMB segment. So
and that's
cool.
N26 and
Revolut.
Okay. Yeah. Cool.
Also, there are some other companies there that are, our customers as well, like Yoko in South Africa, and they do payments and software, and it's a software platform for small businesses in Africa. Mm-hmm. Like, they are a game-changing company for SMBs in South Africa, and I think that what they are building is really, really cool. And we also work with other fintechs, like in London, for instance, Moneybox. It's mobile savings and also an investment app. So really cool stuff, and they have been around for a long while. So really mature company that has scaled a lot. So these are companies that we admire a lot.
What about in
the US? One of our customers is Acorns, for instance. It's a rounding app and also savings app that allows you to also invest very easily. And they were one of the pioneers, but really they have scaled very wisely as well.
How about a little game?
Looking forward to it.
It's not hard. It's just, I call it speed round or lightning round, something like that. We'll go through, we're kind of workshopping the names. We'll go through a couple of questions. It'll be either or a quick hitter. The example I use is like, chess or checkers. You just tell us. It's kind of a get to know you. We want to get to know Julio a little better. Okay, you ready?
Ready to go.
Apple or Android?
Well,
salty or sweet?
Sweet.
Okay. Dogs or cats?
Dogs.
What's your favorite podcast? It's not a trick question.
I've been listening lately a lot to the Huberman podcast.
Huberman?
Yeah, Huberman on health and well-being. That has been, a great addition in the last couple of months. So it's super top of mind now.
Okay. Value or growth?
Value.
Interesting for a venture guy.
I know. You can tell cool. I'm old school.
Your first job?
I was a barman.
Okay.
The very first one.
You have any hidden talents?
I think they are so hidden. I can barely find them.
You want to keep them hidden?
Yes.
Fair enough. Okay, you get a night off to go out on the town. Are you going to a live concert or a comedy club?
Live concert.
And you've got a couple of days, no worries in the world. Are you taking a road trip or are you getting on an airplane?
Road trip.
Yeah? Like to drive?
I like the experience of road tripping. So ideally, maybe, you take a plane and then, go somewhere very exotic and then you take a road trip. But, just stopping and, getting the vibe for a road trip, I really like it. More than the driving.
That was an unexpected answer. It's kind of both. Plane then car. What's the best business book you ever read?
Probably Valuation by McKinsey. I think this is a business book that I really like. It's certainly technical, but really cool to illuminate value, and it really shaped how I was thinking of business value.
Okay, interesting. Love that. Good feedback. On that topic, though, are there any other books or thought leaders, types of resources that you would recommend to our listeners?
Yeah, 100%. So other books, for instance, in business, I remember Principles by Ray Dalio.
That's a great book. I've read that.
I really enjoyed that one. Also, in terms of thought leaders in our space, right, in the FP&A space, which is a bit more, but I think very, very interesting for CFOs and finance professionals in general on the corporate side. I think CJ Gustafson he has a popular newsletter called Mostly Metrics, and he's doing a great job. He's doing a great job. I think high quality content and delivered in a very fun way. So that's very cool. So I would highlight him.
Okay, then. What do you do outside of work? Any hobbies?
100%. Yeah, I'm very active. So first of all, I have 3 children, so they keep me busy on a regular basis. But yeah, mostly surfing on weekends. Like I really like surfing, and we go there as a family. Then I've been practicing martial arts for many years. So, and I continue doing that. And, practicing fitness in general. Like that's something that I value a lot. I like to play chess. That's an old hobby of mine. It's a sport that I admire. And that's it. And I guess that's something simple like having dinner with the family every day. That's important to me.
Love it. Love to transition into sort of some career stuff, get a bit of your career wisdom. So I was reviewing your LinkedIn profile, and I was blown away by the breadth of experiences you have. You've worked in, like I said earlier, wealth management, investment banking, venture, and you've done it in New York, Sao Paulo, Zurich. You've also invested in or sat on the board of a ton of companies around the world too, London, Singapore, Tel Aviv. I'm sure at some point, if you're not planning on it, you should consider writing a book because there's tons of good stuff in there. But before we get into the specific experiences, I want to ask you about one item on your profile that really jumped out. And it said, sabbatical, life is too short. Location was Mumbai. Tell us a bit about that. Why was that important to you? And what did you gain from it?
That's a great question. So unexpected. That's great. So, well, I took a sabbatical, and this is something I highly recommend to everybody, right? I think there is a lot of fear when it comes to career planning in everybody's minds before doing that, but I highly recommend people to take 1 year, or even more time off to really learn some other stuff in life, right? And this is what I did. I was in corporate finance already. That was back in 2006, and this is when Mohamed Yunus won the Nobel Peace Prize for microfinance and all his great work in Grameen Bank. And I had been following his work for a long while, and I was very into it and thought, okay, I have this window. I'm young, I'm 24, and I can really go east and learn more about microfinance and have a great experience along the way as well. And this is precisely what I did. So I decided to leave everything and went there. So I really took away, first of all, pursuing a natural curiosity or, a professional interest or a new purpose, which was, microfinance and how finance can really change and impact things. And actually that led later on to spending time in the World Bank, right? In the microfinance team, right? So things end up connecting later on in your career, and you don't really anticipate that. But also, I was immersed in a new fascinating culture. I played a lot of chess in the street. I started journaling and meditating. So, obviously these type of experiences come with a wealth of stuff that just makes you richer for the rest of your life. And honestly, I still look back at those days and think, wow, that really had an impact in me. And then afterwards, I just continued, to be honest, a very conventional career, I guess, in finance and entrepreneurship later on. But that break was really game changer to me.
Wow. Because you have such a breadth of experience, I'd like to talk about a few of your previous roles. So for context, a lot of our listeners looking to advance their careers, maybe kind of introspective about their positions or their experiences. So I was hoping you could specifically tell us what were some of the most important things or lessons you learned at each of these different stops. I've cherry-picked a few items off of your profile. They're all really high profile, but kind of unique. Now, the first one is wealth management at Bank Inter. What did you learn in wealth management?
I had a very technical role there. So I was analyzing and picking stocks to advise our high net worth individuals as to, how to invest, right? And also, assembling that with a fund strategy. So I was beginning my career in finance back then. So I went down a technical route. I think something I learned there is that getting your technicals right very early in your career and understanding deeply what you're doing is critical. But it took me some time to realize that, the world is just bigger than, finding comfort and finding security in how I'm very good technically. Like that really limits you later on. So I became very strong there. But I think at least in that experience, I neglected maybe, looking for more exposure on the customer side or, something more relational, which actually then I learned later on.
Which is also very valuable. But that's interesting. Technical skills, figure them out, learn them early, but don't get pigeonholed, kind of, right?
Yeah, totally.
Okay, so the next one was private equity consultant at the World Bank IFC, so International Finance Corporation. I think you may have just alluded to this.
Yes, this was mind-blowing, right? And I think the bottom line that really I took away from that experience and that has really informed my entrepreneurial journey later on is that if you want to have an impact in society, the most important thing you need to do is to improve SMB, to improve the SMB segment. This is, after a lot of research, after my experience in, working in microfinance in India, but, more than that. And, I took an MBA in the middle and I focused a lot of my time. I spent a lot of time in development and the biggest takeaway is keep it short and simple, right? Is, improve the SMB space wherever you are. And this is the biggest opportunity you have to make people and economy and society flourish and prosper. And that was my bottom line there. I spent time in South Africa and Kenya evaluating microfinance investments that private equities alongside the IFC and the World Bank had made in those countries. And it was mind-blowing to see how those, with limitations of course, but how those investments had made those countries and those projects flourish. And they had a very tangible impact, right? Both economic, but also, you have some social parameters, you measure that. So what I took away is if I want to have an impact and live by a higher purpose, just impact SMBs and the mid-market. And this is actually, many years later on, something that really guided my thoughts around Abacum and what we're building here.
That's interesting. For our listeners that aren't familiar with the acronym SMB, small and medium-sized businesses, and even in, much more advanced economies, an overwhelming majority of companies that exist are classified as smaller or mid-sized, right? So in terms of having an impact on the largest number of people, that certainly stands to reason.
Totally. And I'm a big believer of that, right? So obviously you can devote your life to health and, have an impact on people's health, or you can, but here we in finance have a great opportunity to really also have an impact. And sometimes we forget about, how much is in our hands to improve things.
That's great. So you also worked in investment banking and you were at
Yes.
Citi. Tell us a little bit about that.
I think this is what really catapulted many things that were in the making in me. So after spending some time in the World Bank, I decided to move into more traditional investment banking. So I spent time in, as you said, New York, Sao Paulo, Zurich, and London. And I think I gained two things, basically. One was a wealth of international experience. I had lived in some other countries in the past, but that really gave me a broader international exposure that, I really loved and appreciated. At the same time, I managed to move from the technicals to the business, I would say. So from, all the modeling, all that stuff, that is all perfect. And it's very important to get it right and to master that. And obviously you guys know a wealth about it. So it's critical to get that out of the way. And then with that under your belt, you can really concentrate on having like that broader business impact. And that comes later on in your career. And this is where at Citi, I really learned how to hopefully do it.
And then you transitioned to Banco Sabadell in consulting and venture. I combine them, even though the roles are probably different, but they were the same firm.
Yes. This is essentially when I moved from more traditional finance, despite the different angles around, analyzing companies to investment banking. I think it's quite similar, to be honest, right?
They rhyme in some ways.
Yes, it's basically evaluation. And here I moved to tech. So that was the massive opportunity that I had to move from a more traditional finance role, which I loved, right? So banking and, it was all very fun. But I moved into a bank that gave me the opportunity to develop a very ambitious fintech initiative. So we deployed many millions, we hired a lot of people, and we built something very foundational around fintech products and, investing in venture capital all over the globe, in the US, in London, in Tel Aviv, in Israel as well. So that was the transition. And what I took away there is, finance was great, but I really found that building products and particularly building fintech products and understanding, early stage and helping people build successfully those businesses was my purpose, basically, right? So that was something that I became extremely passionate about.
Was there a particular moment, like an aha moment, that's where you said, I'm going out on my own, like I want to do my own thing? You'd seen enough kind of venture stage companies that you just knew?
Yes, I think it was the overlapping moment when first I saw very clearly the market opportunity that FPNA represented. So after sitting in the board of these many companies, after working with so many startups, after having spent back then 15 years or more in finance myself, right, I found like this is a massive opportunity to help FP&A and finance teams in the mid-market to really upgrade their game and really fulfill all their potential. Like I became very obsessed about it. And I thought, well, Julio, like, let's be honest, I have an unfair advantage here. Like I've spent many years in finance, many markets. Like, I think I know what to build, right? I might have a couple of ideas here to make something that is really transformational for ourselves, right? Finance for finance. At the same time, at the personal level, I really wanted the next level challenge, let's say. I think we all in our career sometimes find this moment. I already had 3 kids. The family was well established. My wife is a superhero in the family. So, everything was in the right place. And then I thought, well, Julio, I really want to challenge myself. And, you're about to become 40 and I passed that now, unfortunately. And hey, like, it's an awesome opportunity now. You're like high level energy, probably good experience. So a good combination of different parameters. So I decided to just, give it a chance, and it's becoming very successful. Yeah.
So one part unfair advantage, one part midlife crisis.
Yes, you got me.
There you go. You obviously have a ton of exposure to the startup world, but I'm sure that's different than actually starting your own company. So what were 2 or 3 of the biggest challenges you faced in actually getting Abacum off the ground?
Getting it off the ground at the beginning was fairly challenging, right? So we launched 1 week into lockdown, COVID lockdown. So it was literally...
That's unfortunate timing.
Yeah, so it had been in the making for some time, of course, but when we decided to just literally quit our jobs and make it full time, like we ended up locked down for over 2 months, and then with all the subsequent consequences that had. So imagine that back then, I at least I was not used to hire remotely, to pitch to investors 100% remotely, to really make the business take off during that time where, many pundits were predicting the end of the world and a 10-year recession. Like back then, psychologically, it was. Then obviously science and technology made, the crisis way shorter and actually turned it into a boom for venture capital. But back then, COVID was really the first thing. And then the second thing that I remember taking it off the ground is when COVID opened up the opportunity to a lot of capital in the market, right? So continued quantitative easing and, low rates. And, we know what happened in the tech world. And the consequence was an asymmetry in power with talent. It was very, very difficult to hire and retain good talent across the board. I think we performed better than many others, but still, taking it off the ground was really challenging in that changing times.
Yeah, you often hear folks say, well, there's now the world is your potential hiring pool. But what's often forgotten in that is that there's a side door that your employees are feeling the same thing and companies are recruiting them. So it changes the attraction game, but it certainly changes the retention game in some ways too.
Totally.
Now, the flip side, what are sort of 2 or 3 of the biggest wins you feel like you've had with Abacum so far?
So first of all, I think it's our customers. We are literally privileged to have an amazing customer base from the very beginning, right? I think from our first customers were really amazing companies across segments, fintech, but also SaaS and mobility and marketplaces, and then private equity backed, and then listed companies. So, we are building a product that is really game changing, but we feel privileged and honored every day that we have their trust. And this is definitely our biggest win, right? So happy customers across sectors and that continue to grow. So, knock on wood, like this is literally our reason why, and it's our core value, right? The biggest value we have is customer obsession, and we repeat that all the day. So definitely blessed. And then I think the second win is definitely our team. So it's been a journey, but having the capacity and all the learnings to hire the right people to continue shaping up together the right culture for these right people, who determines who we are. I think we are at a very sweet moment where, we have the people that we want on board. We continue hiring in certain functions, but basically, I find that our talent pool is amazing and well established. So, I think it's the 2 core fundamentals now.
Yeah, I mentioned earlier, I'd love to talk a bit about culture, and you've segued really nicely into that. I have a bit of experience working with sort of early stage companies, and I would classify myself as a very small scale investor. I'm using air quotes.
Nice.
But there's always really, unique dynamics, particularly with fintech. And this is why I want to talk about that, because you kind of have your technology camp and your finance camp, and it's a little different. There's certainly some crossovers. So sort of a 2-part question. How do you think about corporate culture in the startup context?
Yeah. So I'm opinionated about this one, right? So I think that obviously culture matters a lot. However, that comes with nuances in the startup world, right? Especially in early stage. So when companies grow and they become corporations, or maybe, after 3, 4, 5 years in your startup journey, probably you want to become more intentional about culture. However, at the beginning, probably survival is what matters most, right? The first year, the first 2 years, you want to build something people want, right? So product market fit is critical, staying close to customers, really talking to customers and fostering that feedback, that obsession very deeply, hiring the right people, building those values, right? So I think that what's critical in the early stage of the startup journey is to really make sure you obsess about product market fit, which means obsess about your customers. And then make sure in the foundational team and in the early team to agree on the key values that are going to guide your principles. And this is what we've done, right? So you have your core values, 3, 4, 5 maximum, right? So you people don't need more, people won't remember. And then make sure those make sense, are respected, are understood, and people live by those values. And I think it's more a framework, because then later on in the journey, probably with a different scale, different problems come, and then maybe you can be more intentional.
And then the second part is there anything really unique that you're doing at Abacum in terms of building a really unique culture?
Yes. So what we do in particularly at Abacum is to really emphasize our core principles. And what we do is, we have an all hands that we call STOA, which is, related to Stoicism and some of the core values that we practice. We are over 100 people now. And, we need to keep that company communication flowing in every direction. At the same time, we do a quarterly offsite for the whole company. So, we gather together and, we still believe that despite being people in different places, some teams meet every month anyway, but despite our New York, London, and Barcelona, probably we are still humans and we are wired to operate face to face once in a while at least and build those relationships and make them, more meaningful so that later on you can extract the value. So we continue doing that. So yeah, I think we also came to the realization, and that comes over time, where you can start front loading, a more flexible culture, prioritizing, a high demand environment where people we are very demanding, right? As a culture, we are, we have high standards, we push hard, we've been in investment banking, and so that gives you a sense, right? But at the same time, it cannot be the same thing, right? So you want to be that platform for people to flourish, for people to really become fulfilled and have a very meaningful job and a lot of impact, and also be surrounded by the best people. So it took us a while to get that balance. Maybe we were more extreme at the beginning. And I think now, given our teammates are really giving very positive feedback about, and it's in Glassdoor and everywhere. So I think we've become very well known in the startup world and in the fintech world for having a very thriving culture.
What's the single most important skill or characteristic that you look for when you're hiring?
I think it's growth mindset. I think it's growth mindset or attitude, which I think it's basically the same, I guess. So the attitude I want to see is growth mindset. That's it. I can elaborate, but I think it's self-explanatory.
That's pretty self-explanatory. You've sat on a lot of boards. Are there any interesting sort of changes or trends emerging in like corporate governance that you think are worth highlighting?
Yes. So I think corporate governance is still in many ways in the making when it comes to, I've been exposed to family businesses or when you are not investor backed, right? And you are the entrepreneur. So there are still some limitations. But a common trend that I'm seeing across the board is the expectations around the CFO as trusted advisor for the business at the board level as well. So back in the day, a few years ago, probably what they wanted is to make sure, the audit is okay. And then I have my financials, every month. And this was the intervention that finance teams had. What we've seen now is that the CFO is really playing a very different and is expected to play a very different game. And we see that. I'm a big fan of Frank Slotman, the CEO at Snowflake, previously ServiceNow. And so he's created billions in value and, a very iconic tech CEO. And it's a great story, right? And I think it's obviously very inspiring for many people, I guess. And hey, but I love how he thinks of his CFO. So he's brought his CFO from the same one, from company to company to build and deliver value. So his partner is not the COO, the, CMO, CRO, whatever. No, it's his CFO, right? So I play attack, he plays defense, whatever setup they have, right? And he's open about it. And I think more and more boards, more and more investors are really looking at the CFO under that lens. What is the business value? Not the financial comfort, right? Oh, yeah, everything is taken care of. No, what's the business value that you are bringing to the table? And this is definitely a trend that we are leveraging, right? Given we are building what we build, FP&A software, and we empower these guys to really fulfill that.
If you could give our listeners one single piece of sort of general business or career advice, what would that be?
Go wide. I think going wide and accumulating a wealth of very diverse and divergent experiences really equips you later on, and you don't really know when, to flourish at a different level. So I think that going wide and accumulating, as I've done, right, and different sets of experiences when it comes of international geographies or nuances within finance or outside of finance, going wide but then in every single experience, pushing very hard to extract the most out of it really can make you a very well-rounded professional that maybe later on, makes you capable of accomplishing endeavors that, maybe a few years ago you were not even thinking about.
That's great advice. If you weren't the CEO of Abacum, what would you be doing?
Hey, I love finance, to be honest, right? So what I'm building and what we are building at Abacum is for finance folks. I don't consider myself anything different than what my customers are, right? Our customers is FP&A finance professionals, and I still consider myself like just a finance folk. Probably I would be doing that. And then probably some more surfing, if I'm honest, but we'll see.
Those both sound good. What can I do to help you in the Abacum team?
Well, we are very active in social media, actually. And I think a year ago, something like that, I started to post more and more about, our thoughts about finance and tech and FP&A. And we've built a great following base across different profiles in the company. So a shout out to our profiles would be amazing there.
Yeah, well, we're happy to post that on our show notes. And I recommend for our listeners to check out the site if you're on a finance team in an FP&A function or otherwise, like, check out the software. It's really a heck of a product. Where can they go to find more about you? Like what LinkedIn, what other social media?
Yes,
are you
on? Our website, abacum.io, or just if they drop me a note in my LinkedIn profile, I'm more than happy to direct them to the right people.
Cool. Well, listen, Julio, this has been terrific. I really want to thank you on behalf of our listeners for your time and your insight.
Guys, thank you so much. It was a blast.
All right. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Net Learnings. This podcast is powered by CFI, an organization on a mission to enhance the skills, knowledge, and productivity of finance and banking professionals. If you enjoyed what you heard in this episode, make sure to follow Net Learnings wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, or visit us online at corporatefinanceinstitute.com/podcast. See you next time.